So I understand that you're learning Eilu Metzi'os, and the advantage of when Yeshiva is learning Eilu Metzi'os is that I don't have to bother asking what daf you're up to. I don't have to bother asking what sugi you're up to, because you inevitably are still in the sugi of Yiush midaas. If by some wild chance you actually finish the sugya, it took you 2.5 blatt to do so, and I imagine it's still fairly fresh in everybody's mind. So what I want to try to do today is take a few examples, shilas, halach l'maisa shilas that come up, that are actually rooted in the first two dafim of the second parak of Bava Metzia, and try to see how they play out, to try to take the Gemaras, the Rishonim, the Sugyas, la halacha, to try to apply some of the lumdus that no doubt you've already been exposed to, and see l'mais how some of the things play out for us practically. So we'll raise the first question. It's probably the most common example of a Hashavas Aveidah shaila. Rabbi, I found some money in shul. What do I do? Am I allowed to keep the money, or am I obligated to announce the money? I'll tell you a secret. There's a third logical possibility. I'm not saying this only because I'm a shul rabbi, but maybe the money neither has to be announced, nor does the money belong to you. Perhaps the money belongs to the shul. Maybe the shul was kona the money. Maybe the shul acquired the money. So let's see if we can analyze the shana together. So the Gemara actually, in the beginning of Eilu Metzi'os, quotes a brisa that talks about matzah most b'fuzar b'Beis HaMikdash. Person finds money scattered, finds money, loose money in the shul. So one thing is very, very clear, that there is no siman on the money. Why is there no siman on the money? Very simple, because generally speaking, a dollar bill doesn't have any demarcation on it. So therefore, it's a davar she'ein bo siman. A davar she'ein bo siman, so of course you know, you've been learning on Metzias for a little while. Of course you know a davar she'ein bo siman. Basically, we can assume that the owner is most probably going to be Aish. Most probably is going to give up hope. He has no way of identifying the item anyway, and therefore probably Yiush is going to take place. If and when Yiush takes place, that the owner gives up hope, then the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveidah no longer applies, and I'm allowed to keep it. But of course, the red flag is that Eilu Metzi'os, machlokes Abaye and Rava, of course. What if the owner has not yet been Aish? For a very simple reason. He doesn't even know that he lost it yet. So that raises a big question. That's the machlokes Abaye and Rava for two dafim. So according to Rava, no big deal. When he finds out that he loses it, then we can go back in time retroactively. We could say, well, if he would have known at the time that it got lost, that he's never going to be able to find it, it's after the fact, lima freya, so Yiush midaas have a Yiush. And Abaye disagrees and says no. That Yiush midaas love Yiush lima freya lo yamrinan. So only if you pick up the object after the owner was already misyash, only then and then are you allowed to actually keep the item. So that becomes very tricky. The Gemara says, I find money in a shul. How can the brisa say I'm allowed to keep it? How do I know that the guy knows that he lost the money? To which the Gemara answers, Adam osu l'mashmish b'kisa b'chol shah. That people tend to, play around with the wallet, check the wallet, make sure they haven't lost any money, and therefore we can assume pretty good chance that the owner actually does know about it. He was misyayish on it because there's no siman whatsoever, and therefore there's no need to try to give back the money because we can assume that the owner was misyayish. One can argue that today most people don't walk around feeling their wallets because most people today don't carry wallets. For that matter, most people don't lose cash anymore because nobody carries cash. So you guys are in a whole different generation. Like my kids, I always have this argument with them. Whenever they're going somewhere on a trip, I say, take some cash with you. And they laugh at me, say, cash? What do I need cash for? What do I do with cash? I got everything. I got my Zelle, I got my cards, I got everything. I said, I come from the old generation. You never know, you have to carry some cash with you. But the mice said the kids don't listen always, and then they call me, and I got to go sell whatever money they need. But so back to that story. So the Gemara is pretty straightforward. I don't have to return the money. But I have a kasha for you. Why does the Gemara only talk about the possibility of keeping the money or returning the money? I have a third possibility. Maybe the rightful owner of this cash is the shul. Based on what mechanism should the shul own the money? So I don't know whether, did anyone here learn the first Bava Metzia? Okay, so the first Bava Metzia, we're introduced to what's called the kinyan chatzer. If something is put into my property, I become the rightful owner of that. So let's say if I want to give you a gift, and I don't actually hand it to you, but I put it down in your house, that's a method of acquisition in halacha. What if a davar shel hefker, an ownerless item, falls into my property? So if it meets all the standards of kinyan chatzer, so then that owner of the property will be kona the item. So wait a second, hold the phone. Why does the Gemara not talk about that possibility? Why is the Gemara pimpling about whether I keep it or whether I have to return it? L'chorah, the correct answer should be the shul should be kinyan. Why? So the money comes into the shul. The shul has a kinyan chatzer. So and then our shul is myself and Rabbi Berg. We daven in the same shul. Congregation or Torah, they become the rightful owner of the cash that's found there, based on the principle of kinyan chatzer. Why doesn't that happen? What is wrong with it? Why doesn't the Gemara mention that? So one of the Rishonim, or the Sefer Agudah. Sefer Agudah wrote a running parish into Masechtas and Shas. So I don't know whether you spoke a little bit about that in Shir, but the Sefer Agudah tells us that, I'll tell you why the shul is not kind with the kinyan chatzer. It has to do with exactly where we're sitting right now. It has to do with the Bava Metzia. It has to do with the Beis HaMikdash itself. Says the Sefer Agudah, a shul has the halachic status like a quasi Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara says in Maseches Megillah that at the time of the Churban, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a special gift called Bate Knesios or Bate Midrashos. We have a little small yeshivas, a small Bate Knesset shuls. That's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shechina is found. That's what we daven. That's what we learn. So they take on certain halachic dimensions of a Beis HaMikdash. It's for this reason why many of the halachas of honor and respect that's due to a shul and to a Beis Medrash are actually derived from the Beis HaMikdash proper. So comes the Sefer Agudah and says, let's push the question back. What would the din be if somebody loses something in the Beis HaMikdash? Would the Beis HaMikdash acquire the item? Does the Beis HaMikdash have a kinyan chatzer? Does that concept make any sense in the realm of the Beis HaMikdash? So the Sefer Agudah says no. He claims based on a Tosafos and Maseches Bava Basra, based on a Sugi Bava Basra, that the Beis HaMikdash doesn't have that mechanism to be kona with a kinyan chatzer. How did Tosafos know that? Where did they get it from? It's based on a Sugi that appears in Bava Basra. It's a Mishnah that has a source in Maseches Be'ilah. The Mishnah tells us as follows. What if you have a pit that belongs to hekdesh? Somebody owned a pit, somebody owned a backyard with a pit in it, and they were makdesh it. They gave it as a gift to the Beis HaMikdash, and now that pit was filled up with water. Now it rained into the pit. So what's the status of the water in that pit? What if somebody goes ahead and drinks that water? Is that called stealing from hekdesh? If you steal from the Beis HaMikdash, you have to bring a special korban called the korban me'ilah. Is that tantamount to stealing from the Beis HaMikdash? So the Gemara says no. The Mishnah says no. Tosafos says, why is it not stealing? Why wasn't the Beis HaMikdash property? Why wasn't that bar kona the mayim? So Tosafos says, because there's no such thing as a kinyan chatzer for the Beis HaMikdash. It just doesn't exist. There is no such concept. So therefore, comes the Sefer Agudah and says, if there's no concept of a kinyan chatzer for the Beis HaMikdash, then the corollary of that would be, there's no kinyan chatzer for a shul either, because as we said, a shul is basically almost like a mini Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, says the Sefer Agudah, now I'll explain to you why the Gemara doesn't even address the issue of the shul acquiring the money. The only issue in the Gemara is, does the owner retain ownership? Does the person who finds it get ownership? The shul is not even in the discussion, because ein kinyan chatzer to a Beis HaKnesses, the same way that there's no kinyan chatzer for the Beis HaMikdash. That's the chiddush, a double chiddush of the Agudah. No chatzer for Beis HaMikdash, and by extension, a corollary, no chatzer for a shul, which is didok a Beis HaMikdash. So comes, it's hard to know here who you're going to have to compete with, but whatever it is, it's all good. So yeah, so the question? Okay. So comes the Ketzos and disagrees with the Sefer Agudah on multiple levels, on multiple grounds. Comes the Sefer Ketzos HaChoshen and says that first of all, maybe that's not the reason why the Beis HaMikdash wasn't kona the water. Says the Ketzos, if you look at the Ramban and Bava Basra, the Ramban says that the Beis HaMikdash actually was kona the water. Beis HaMikdash does have a kinyan chatzer. So why is there no me'ilah? Why don't you have to bring a korban if you by mistake drank the water that belonged to the Beis HaMikdash? So the Ramban explains that the only time there's a din of me'ilah is only if a person was makdesh it with his own mouth. I declare this should belong to the Beis HaMikdash. If the Beis HaMikdash did some good business deal and they ended up acquiring something on their own, that's not called me'ilah. It's mamon hekdesh. It belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. I'm not allowed to drink it, but I'm not chayav me'ilah. So the Ketzos questions the very premise number one. But then, premise number two, comes the Ketzos and says, I disagree with the Sefer Agudah on another ground, a totally different grounds. Says the Ketzos, when we say that a shul is like the Beis HaMikdash, that means the same way you're not allowed to do certain things in a Beis HaMikdash, you're not allowed to do in a shul. There's Hashavas, Hashem's presence is more in the shul than it is outside, similar to Beis HaMikdash. But in terms of dinei mominus, a very basic fundamental question, who owns a shul? Who is the bailim? Who is the halachic owner of a shul? So says the Ketzos, the halachic bailim of a shul are the members of that shul, the members of that community, the people who paid to build the shul, the people who paid to upkeep the shul. They are considered to be the halachic owners. That is different from Beis HaMikdash. Beis HaMikdash belongs to nobody. The Beis HaMikdash is a separate entity. It's like in halach, it's like a corporation. It's its own entity. It's its own bylaws. It has no connection to any one person. A shul belongs to, we have 100 paying members in the shul, in good standing. They are the owners of the shul. Therefore, argues the Ketzos, if they are the owners of the shul, so then the halacha says that, well, if I have private property, a shul is basically private property of 100 people. But since there are private owners of a shul, therefore they should be kona with a kinyan chatzer. So we're back to square one. So we started out by saying the Gemara doesn't even address the issue of the shul acquiring the lost money. The only thing the Gemara wants to know is whether the money goes to the finder, whether the money goes to the loser. The Gemara never ever entertains the possibility of the money going to the shul. So whereas the Sefer Agudah said the reason is because shuls don't have a kinyan chatzer, they can't acquire something just based on kinyan chatzer. The Ketzos says that's not the reason. It's not the reason because even the Beis HaMikdash is a kinyan chatzer. And it's not the reason because a shul is not Beis HaMikdash. A shul is a privately owned enterprise. And therefore back to square one. So why is it that there's no kinyan chatzer? Why doesn't the shul acquire the money that's found in it? So the Ketzos says it's based on a totally different reason. There's a Gemara in Bava Metzia, the Risham developed the yesod that if Reuben loses something and Shimon picks up the item first, and now it's sitting in Shimon's hands, and then Reuben is misyash, then Reuben gives up hope, that doesn't work. Yiush has to precede the picking up of the item. Why is that? So the Ramban in Bava Metzia and Chavav explains, the reason for that is that I can only be misyash on something when it's not really in my property. I lose something in the middle of the street, so then I can be misyash from something. I can't be misyash on something that's in my house. I misplaced my jacket. I can't find my jacket. I'm misyash. The Ramban said that doesn't mean anything. Yiush only takes place on things that are lost. Things that are out of your domain. If it's inside your domain, Yiush doesn't take hold. Says the Ramban, when somebody picks up something, they become an extension of you. When I find a lost object, as long as the owner wasn't misyash, I'm a shomer Aveidah. I have an obligation to return the item, and I'm considered to be an extension of the owner himself. If that's the case, the whole parsha, the whole sug of Yiush wouldn't apply. Says the Ketzos, the same is true of the money in the shul. When the money is dropped in the shul gets the hands on it right away. The shul is holding on to it right away. Now the original Yiush isn't going to take hold. So the Gemara is talking a different language, says the Ketzos. The Gemara is a whole different presentation. It has nothing to do with the Tais of the Ramban. The whole sugya is not correct because says the Ketzos, the whole ownership of a shul has nothing to do. Shuls are not Beis HaMikdash. So this machlokes now is a shul it's like a Beis HaMikdash or not. This could have potential ramifications way out of Hashavas Aveidah. And I'll share with you a fascinating shot that came my way a couple of years ago. On the day after Pesach, I got a frantic call from a Rava in a different shul that he forgot to sell the shul's chametz. Usually the Rabbanim or the president, somebody sells on behalf of the shul chametz. Some shuls have a lot of chametz, some shuls have a lot of liquor, shuls have a lot of stuff stuffed away in their challah rolls for the last 3 years of kiddushes. Shuls have a lot of chametz. And this particular shul forgot to sell the chametz. The rabbi felt so bad, maybe I have to throw everything out. What's the halacha? So I said to him, I think it's okay based on the following logic. We have a running question as to who owns shul and by extension who owns shul property. So according to the Sefer Agudah, there is no ownership of a shul. A shul and shul property is like a davar shel hekdesh. It's owned by this new entity called kadosh. A makam kadosh has a new kind of ownership, but it's not private property. The isser of owning chametz and Pesach only applies to private property. Let's say, for example, the Beis HaMikdash can actually own chametz on Pesach. There's no isser shachoyet harav harosh al gavoa. The isser about Aveidah mitzvah, the prohibition of owning chametz, applies to private citizens. Doesn't apply to kadosh, the hekdesh type of chametz. Therefore, one could argue that according to the Sefer Agudah, shuls don't really violate owning chametz on Pesach, and the prohibition of eating chametz of Pesach, chametz that was owned on Pesach, only applies if the owners violated any transgression. If the chametz was just sitting in the shul, but nobody actually violated by Rabbi Metzia, then presumably the chametz will be butter. So I explained to this Rav that if the Sefer Agudah is right, then I think you're okay, nothing to worry about. But what if the Ketzos is right? What if the Ketzos' argument is more correct that a shul is ultimately private property? A shul is just made up of the property of all the owners. So I thought you're also okay. I'll tell you why. Because all the members of the shul sell their own private chametz. And when we sell chametz, we write the following text. We're hereby selling the chametz in such and such places, and even chametz that's not in these places. Let's say I forgot, I left chametz in another refrigerator, I left it in my office, I forgot to put it on the list. So it's all included in the mechira. So when Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, all the members of Shul Ploni, wrote that they're selling their private chametz, included that sale are all their rights and all their ownership, the partial ownerships of the schnapps that's sitting in the shul cabinets. So I thought that no matter how you slice it, no matter what you think about this machlokes, after the fact, we can salvage all the chametz in the shul. Again, lechatchila, we still follow the practice of shuls trying to sell chametz, but after the fact, to say that the chametz is also, I think would be a little bit too much. I think that either according to the Sefer Agudah, we're good to go, or even according to the Ketzos, I think we're good to go as well. So again,
if you knew members were in Torah mitzvahs.
Oh, excellent. Oh, so somebody asked me that question. Well, wait a second. Maybe those members have a small share in the chametz and they didn't sell their chametz. Now we have a problem. So I thought that's okay also, because if you think about it, when we sell shul chametz, we don't take a vote whether we want to sell the shul chametz. There's one person who sells on behalf of the shul. It's understood that shul property has certain people who are allowed, who have the authority to sell their chametz. So to over here, even if Reuven is not so from and he keeps the store with chametz open in Pesach, but Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, the other people are no worse than the president, no worse than the governor, no worse than the rabbi. So I think they're authorized to sell on behalf of everybody else. So I think b'diavad that would be okay. So we have at least one example, one case that really comes up a lemaisa. There's another very, very much lemaisa application of a sugya that appears within the first two dapim, within the sugya of Yiush midaas, and that's the following. We pasken halacha like Abaye. This is actually one of the 6 examples, one of the 6 exceptions to the rule. We follow the opinion that Yiush shelo midaas lo Yiush, that a person cannot be midaas on something that he doesn't know about yet. That even though we know that if he would know about it, he would be midaas, but that's not enough. You have to actually know about it b'shas ma'aseh. So we don't say retroactively review it as if you would have agreed to it before, and that's not going to work in halacha. So Tosafos on the spot has a diuk in that sugya and tells us, what would the din be? Forget about Yiush for a second. Forget about Aveidah for a second. What about gezela? And we know taking somebody else's property without their permission, we have a word for that. It's called gezela. It's called stealing. What is the din in the following case? I walk into your house, and I don't have permission to take something out of your fridge to eat. But I know you're a nice guy, and I'm pretty confident that if you would know that I came in and I'm hungry and I'm thirsty, you would have said yes. But you didn't say yes because you didn't know about it. So can I go ahead and take your food, take your item, and use it without your permission and make the following calculation? If you would have known that I'm here, you would have given me permission. So therefore, we view it retroactively as if you gave permission. So Tosafos says, red flag. Tosafos says, that should depend upon Abaye and Rava. If you hold like Rava, that you could be metziah retroactively, then I could give you permission to take my food retroactively as well. But if you hold like Abaye, the way we pasken halacha, that retroactive permission just doesn't work, so then it's a problem. At the time that I'm drinking this, the can of soda in your fridge, I don't have your permission. And therefore, I have a word for me. That's called a gazlan. I'm taking something from somebody else without their permission. So that's what Tosafos writes. Tosafos says in Ochinami, that's the din, that you have no right to go into somebody's property and ask them, and use it without asking their permission. So not everybody agrees to Tosafos, but let's work for now, for a moment, within Shittas Tosafos. So we have a little bit of a problem, because there is a din that appears in several places in Shulchan Aruch that when it comes to a davar shel mitzvah, let's say I walk into shul, and all of a sudden I realize, Gavalt, I forgot to bring my tefillin this morning, and I see there's a pair of tefillin there, I know the guy davened at the Ashkal minyan, whatever, I davened at the early minyan, so I want to know, can I use that tefillin, or am I obligated to track him down and ask him to get a permission? So in Shulchan Aruch it says that I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to, quote unquote, borrow the person's tefillin without asking him permission. Why is that? Because a person would most likely want me to do a mitzvah. People like to do mitzvahs, people like to encourage other people to do mitzvahs. So an average from Jew would be very, very happy to know that his tefillin is being used properly. So that's okay. I'm allowed to take his tefillin without asking his permission. That din applies to tefillin, because tefillin, there is no real halach of owning. I can borrow tefillin also. Let's say, for example, lulav on the first day of Sukkot, I can't walk into shul and take somebody's lulav, because even if the person knew about it and just merely lent me the lulav, it wouldn't work. In order to be yotzei lulav, there's a din of lachem. The lulav has to belong to you. So just borrowing it, even if it's true that he's okay with it, that's not going to help. But for tefillin, that's perfectly okay. So comes the Sefer the Ketzos HaChoshen says, I don't understand. It says the Ketzos, Tosafos says that you can't borrow or go into someone's fridge and drink a can of Coke without getting permission, because that's what's called a Yiush midaas. So manishtana, why is it that I am permitted to go and take your tefillin, even though you didn't give me permission? Because I'm guessing, I'm making an educated guess, probably you would agree. Even if I had Ruach HaKodesh, I knew you would agree, but you haven't agreed yet. So what right do we have to say Lemafrei it's going to work? So the Ketzos develops a new category. The Ketzos says that this principle of Yiush Lemafrei Lo Amrinan is not all the time true. There are exceptions to this rule. What is the exception? The exception is Mokah Mitzvah. Mokah Mitzvah is an exception. Why is that? What made Mokah Mitzvah an exception to Gezela? So the Chayr with the Ketzos is driving at is as follows. That Yiush Lo Midas, Lo Have Yiush. Why? Because at the end of the day, I don't know with certainty. I'm surmising, I'm guessing, I'm making an educated guess that the person is probably going to be Metziah. Probably, but not definitely. Or let's say the case of walking in and drinking a can of Coke, he's probably going to be okay with it, but maybe not. Maybe he's only got 1 or 2 cans of soda left, but he's not so happy about me drinking it. So says the Ketzos, but when do we say that Lemafreya doesn't work? When there's at least a bona fide suffix. It may not be a very large percentage of a suffix, but it's still a suffix whatsoever. In situations where there is certainty, I know for a fact, it's not even a question, this is not conjecture, this is absolute knowledge, for sure you're going to be okay with it. Then the halacha says, even though you don't know about it, it's still going to be good. And argues the Ketzos, Dorsha Mitzvah is that. Dorsha Mitzvah meets that parameter of being, this is not a rove, not a probably consent, this is 1,000% consent. How do we know this? Where did this category come from? How did the Ketzos know? He also learned Eilu Metzi'os. We all learned Eilu Metzi'os. Do we find this in the Gemara itself? So the answer is quite possibly yes. So there is a sugya that appears in a few places in Bava Metzia. You probably saw it in the very beginning. It's called Zuto Shayam, or Shalisu Shonar, or Shot for Nar. It's a sugya that describes as follows. I'm living on the banks of the Mississippi River, and all of a sudden the Mississippi begins to overflow, and all of a sudden my house and my couches and my tables and my chairs and my book, everything gets swept down the Mississippi. So I'm all the way up in St. Louis, and now it's all the way down. There's a guy in the bottom in New Orleans, and he sees a couch and a bookcase coming down the Mississippi River, and he realizes it's an Aveidah. So comes the Gemara and says the regular rules of Aveidah don't apply. You know why? This is different. This is a different pattern. This is a different sugya. This is called shot for nahar, and it's okay. It's fine. No problem. You're allowed to take it, even though the guy doesn't even know that the Mississippi overflowed. So comes the Gemara and says you're allowed to do it. Why are you allowed to do that? So it's a major machlekes in Rishonim. So Tosafos says you're allowed to do it because it's Ketzos HaChoshen. That's it. Don't ask any kashas. That the Torah says when you have what's called Aveidah b'kol adam, when you have shot for nar, something that's totally was taken over by a hurricane. It's the tsunami. The river's overflowing. The ocean took it away. That's not Aveidah. That's a different parish. That's a different sugya, and you're allowed to take it. You don't need Yiush. And Rashi seems to say that's not the pshat. Rashi says, you know why you're allowed to take it? Because for sure the owner was Metziah. Who in their right mind would not be Metziah? I just saw the Mississippi River overflow. My stuff's going hundreds of miles downstream. No Meshuggah is ever not going to be Metziah. And therefore that's okay. So all the Rishonim ask against Rashi, but he doesn't know about it yet. The Gemara says beferish, even though the owner doesn't know about it. Don't we pasken Yiush midaas lo Yiush? So the answer, what seems to be, the Ketzos says, is that when do we say Yiush midaas lo Yiush? That's when there's a latest suffix. I don't know. It could be his Metziah, could be not. Probably 87.5% chance is Metziah. But if it's 100% certain nobody in their right mind would ever not be Metziah, so then we do hold, even Abaye concedes that Lemafreya would be Yiush. The same is true when Davar Shal Mitzvah. To go into a guy's house and drink his Coke, that's off limits. That I'm not allowed to do. To go into his house and use his tefillin, that I'm allowed to do. Because a regular frum Jew may have hesitation about me drinking his soda without his permission. No frum Jew would ever hesitate from letting me wear his tefillin. People like that, people want that, forget that would be good. That is assuming that I don't abuse the rights of taking somebody's item. Let's say I take somebody's item and in the process I destroy it. In the process I cause a damage. So that's a red flag. That most people wouldn't be so happy about. So it's for this reason that the Mishnah Berurah has a famous psak where the Mishnah Berurah says, you want to walk into shul and borrow a guy's tefillin, that's okay. But you want to borrow a guy's sefer? That's out of the question, says the Mishnah Berurah. Why is that? Because the sefer you're going to borrow it and all of a sudden the pages are going to rip. People don't want the pages to rip, and therefore that's a problem. Now, one could argue maybe that doesn't apply Bisman Hazeh for the following reason. Maybe the Mishnah was talking about, maybe cheaper Svarim, that the pages would rip pretty quickly. Today, Baruch Hashem has Svarim, a little bit higher quality publishing, and therefore maybe one could argue that our Svarim are the halach equivalent of the tefillin. Maybe that concern the Mishnah isn't true. One could argue also if you're in a yeshiva setting, so you kind of understood, it's got a little built-in system that if you leave a sefer in the Beis HaMikdash, kind of people know that people pick up the sefer, look for things. So I would say as follows, that if you borrow somebody's sefer and you abuse that right, you take it back to your place and you don't return it back, so people really don't like that. You can't take a guy's sefer out of the Beis HaMikdash, bring it to your dorm and give it back at 6 months from now. That's like tantamount to what the Mishnah is saying. People are not so happy about that. But I think that if you use it in a very, very limited sense, some people like to put in that mutter b'soch dal amas and all those kind of things. If you keep it within reason, you use a person's sefer within reason in a Beis HaMikdash setting, I would imagine, I don't know if there's an official policy in the Yeshiva here, but I think there's kind of almost an unwritten policy in many places. If you pick a guy's sefer and you're careful with it, so you could probably assume this is the equivalent of the tefillin, which again is a hekdesh because this is the exception to the rule of Yiush midaas. So again, we have a sugya 2-3 blatt long with a lot of lomdus about the Yiush shelo midaas, and again some intricate issues, some lomdus shalos that come up. It's a practical halach l'maisa applications about the shul, the money, the svarim, the tefillin, etc. I just want for the remaining time just speak a little bit, a little drop in machshava, just about something that also relates a little bit to metzias, a little bit of a different kind of a metziah. It's a pasken dilim that says, "Sos anochi al imrasecha kemotze shalom rav." David HaMelech describes his joy, his great joy at finding Torah. Sos al imrasecha, he finds words of Torah. He comes to yeshiva, and all of a sudden he's sitting and learning. He's learning Eilu Metzi'os. He's having a great time. He realizes this is a really special treat, a special treasure. Kemotze shalom rav. He compares the words of Torah to finding a great treasure. Now, if I would ask you, that's almost like a little bit of an embarrassment. It's almost like a little bit of an insult to the Torah. Because, a treasure is dollars and cents, it's gold, it's nice, it's important, but how can you even put like a price tag on? How can you say that the words of Torah, you guys are Baruch Hashem sitting and learning, and you're sitting and learning Torah, Yom V'Laila, how can you compare that to getting a treasure, a couple of $1,000s, to winning the lottery? I mean, come on. So there's another pasuk. Another pasuk says, Tov li Torah's bicha me'alfei zov v'chesef. The David HaMelech says that the words, what? Did we say what? Oh, there you go, okay. Tov li Torah's bicha me'alfei zov v'chesef. That the words of Torah are even greater than all the gold, all the silver, the thousands of gold and silver coins. So now I have a steer, I have a contradiction. The pasuk before David HaMelech just said the Torah is like the expensive jewels, expensive coins, and now he's saying it's better. So which one is it? Is it better or is it the same? So I think the answer is very, very simple. Means he just found it out. So he walks into the Beis HaMikdash and he sees, hey, there's something nice here. It's the first day of Yeshiva, opening day, first day of Elul. He sits down, come on, high school. He looked a little bit, did a little bit. He sits down the first time, wow. Well, he read a Mishnah. Well, he looked at a Rashi, read. And he had a Ketzos HaChoshen and the Torah, and the Rebbe gave an answer. Well, this is fun, this is good, this is inspiring, this is exciting. He's kemotze shalom rav. He's like a person who just found the treasure, just won a lot of money. So he's happy, he's excited, but there are degrees of excitement. His excitement is compared to the motze shalom rav. Tov li Torah's bicha means it's not the first day of El anymore. Now we're well into the winter's man. Now he's been learning for weeks, he's been learning for months, and now he's involved in Libid Torah, and he sees, wow, this is Torah's Hashem. Tov li Torah's bicha, turns to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom, the Torah is your Torah. You're giving me a chance, you're talking to me, you're speaking to me, you're giving me a chance to be involved and delve into your chachma. Wait a second, when I said on the first day of this man, when I was in mitzvah, when I just found the treasure, I was immature the first day. The first day, I got excited. It's the first time I ever opened up a Gemara in the last, my whole life. So I was excited, but it was an immature type of excitement. Now, whoa, Tov li Torah's bicha, me'alfei zov v'chesef, it's much more. What I thought was like gold, it's not even in the ballpark. It's 1,000,000,000 times more than gold. But now I'll show you a third pasuk. The pasuk says that mesuki midvash me'noifes tufim. That the words of Torah are nechmadim mizah v'pazrav, they are more dear, they're more precious than gold and silver. That sounds like we heard that mashal already. But then David HaMelech, almost kind of a little bit of a downer, and they're sweet like honey. Sweet like honey, I understand. You just got finished telling me they're greater than all the gold and silver. You told me that they're the most precious thing, worth billions and billions, and then some. And then you tell me, oh, by the way, they're also they're yummy, delicious, like honey nut Cheerios. They're sweet as honey. That's an insult to Torah. If they're like gold, if they're greater than gold, you can buy a lot of boxes of honey nut Cheerios, a lot of containers of honey with one piece of gold. So if you already told me that it's worth more than gold, what's the chiddush you're saying that now it's sweet like honey? So there's something that's very, very precious. I have a very, very expensive coin. But I'll tell you a secret. The coin is only worth something because I can barter it, I can trade it and get something. Because I can buy something with that coin. Imagine you're on a desert island and there's no one to sell you anything. You can have all the coins in the world. What do you do with it? You can't do anything with it. You can't enjoy it. Try to eat the coin. Go try to lick the coin. It's not going to taste very good. You're not going to enjoy it. A coin, money, gold, and silver are only important, not because they're intrinsically important. They're important because they have the ability of trading it in for something else that may be worth something. Honey is not very expensive, but it's yummy. It's delicious. If you're on a desert island and you got some honey, it's going to taste good. Honey is intrinsically good. It's tasty. It doesn't matter that it's not very expensive. It's intrinsically tasty. David HaMelech is now showing his progression in terms of learning. He started learning like Eilu Metzi'os. I found the metziah. Well, this Torah is good. It's nice. I won a $10,000 lottery. It's cute, nice. Not so much. All of a sudden, he stays in Yeshiva a little longer. Now he's well into winter's mana. Wow, this is really something. We learned the whole sugya, Yiush midaas. We talked about a Sefer Agudah and Ketzos. Wow, we're learning sugyas, Taisim, Rambam. We're really holding and learning. This is great. This is becoming even more exciting. And then the Melech realizes, as great as Torah is, it's like gold and silver in the sense of that you can get something from it. With gold, you can buy things in this world. Torah, Gadol Talmud, Shemeva de Maisa, it will help you improve your Aveidah Hashem. It'll help you perform your mitzvahs. It'll lead one thing to the next. It's a good thing. You can barter it. The more that you learn, the greater you can do. That's going to get you as a step stool to get you a little higher up in Aveidah Hashem. And then all of a sudden, the Rebbe wakes up and he says, you know what? There's something else. I didn't realize this. Maybe I had to make it all the way to after Pesach's month to realize this. Forget about the fact that Torah is like gold. Forget about the fact that Torah is more expensive than gold. Torah tastes delicious. Just learning Torah for no other reason. There's no gold, there's no agenda, there's no bar, there's nothing. The Torah is sweet. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us gifts in this world that we have to do. We have to eat. If we don't eat, so we won't be able to survive. We can't live. We need the proteins, the amino acids, we need the fats, we need the carbohydrates. In order for our cells, for our body to work properly, we have to have nutrition. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have made it that the food would have tasted miserable. And guess what? We would have eaten anyway. We would have been stuck. Everything we eat could have been miserable and a horrible experience. But never, what are you going to do? You got to eat, otherwise you can't live. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'chasdo HaGodol, made the food taste yummy. Now, sometimes there's an inverse relationship between how good the food tastes and how good it is for your health. That's a different story. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu made this yummy, delicious food. He wants us to enjoy it. We make a bracha, praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the beautiful gifts that He gives us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu not only gave us food that's nutritious, He gave us food that's tasty as well. So in the world of Ruchnius also, He not only gave us Torah mitzvahs that are necessary, He gave us Torah mitzvahs that are enjoyable, that are sweet. They're sweet as honey as well. So give everyone here a bracha that Mitzvah Hashem, as the year continues, they continue to grow in Eilu Metzi'os and other limudim and your mitzvahs and your kedusha, all the wonderful, beautiful Mitzvah Hashem that you're involved in. So remember these lessons. So again, try to remember the Agudah, the Ketzos also, that's also great. But try to remember the last few words of what we said. Remember what it means that you're just barely scratching the surface. You're almost like in between the Motzei Shel Rav and the Torah Spicha. As you grow every day in Yeshiva, so your love and appreciation for Torah grows even more. And as you grow even further and further, you begin to sense that it's sweet, it's honey. There's nothing like it in the world. So you all a bracha, you should all reach that point to be able to say B'lev Shalem, Hanechamad, and Mizah, V'Pazrav, as well as a Mesuk V'Dash, V'Nashis.